Hamoshives ishto chenvanis, o shemina apetropia, harezu mashpia, calls manshir. Supposed to listen to this. A man goes ahead and sets his wife up as a chenvanis. Limkor yeno uperosa bechanos. Well, so let's say again they have property. So let's say he runs a store and he sells wine and fruit. Wine and fruit. So what happened? That's Rashi's case. It doesn't really matter what she's selling. So he sets her up as the shopkeeper, or Shemina Apetropia, or for that matter, he put her in charge. He put her in charge of the properties or of the estate, right? So Rashi points out. So she's dealing with the produce. She's hiring workers. She's conducting business. What's the halacha? Mashpia calls man shiyirtze. He can make her take an oath that she is not stealing anytime he wants. Meaning again, we'll say. And by the way, no different than any person who really works for you. Technically speaking, you could go ahead as an employer. You can go ahead and make your employees take a shavua that they are not skimming anything additional off the top. Okay, and the chiddush over is you can do it even with your wife. Rebbe Lazar Omer. Afilu al pilcha v'alisasa. It's not just if she's running your business, but this is true. Even pilcha is her spindle, or isasa is the dough. That you can make it. Rebbe Lo says you can make her take a shavua. This is actually very interesting. That's what that she's not skimming any dough. Right, that she's not taking any dough. This is not like proverbial. Doesn't matter. This is actual dough. Right, that she's not taking any additional dough and kind of selling it off on the side, or that she's not stealing any thread and taking it for herself. Says the Gemara, Ibailuhu Rabbi Eliezer Aidei Gilgul Ka'amar Olachatchila Kamar. Now, listen to this. We will see there's a concept of Gilgul Shua. Gilgul Shua means that there are certain things that by themselves do not generate an obligation for an oath, but once you are swearing about A, we could be megalgal, we could roll other things onto that and make you swear about those other items as well. So when Rabbi Eliezer says that you can administer an oath, even regarding her dough usage or her thread usage, is he saying that Aidei Gilgul Ka'amar or Lechatchila Ka'amar? Is he saying that once you're already making her swear, let's say because she's a chenvanis, then you could roll this other stuff onto it as well? Or is he saying that literally the chatchila, a husband could make his wife take a shvua, that she's not taking any extra dough or any extra thread from the household? So Tashma, let's analyze this. Amulol Rabbi Eliezer, they said to Rabbi Eliezer, this is not appropriate. In adam dar im nachash bekafifa. So you can't do this to the woman. You can't have a situation where a husband could make his wife take a shvua whenever he wants. You know, she's baking challah on Erev Shabbos on Thursday, and he thinks that some of the dough is missing, and mama, she can make her take a shvua. You can't do that. You can't create a marriage like that. Literally, you can't live with a snake in the same basket. If you set up a marital situation like this, it will absolutely implode. So if Rabbi Eliezer holds that literally you could administer such a shvur like this, al pilcha va'alisasa, even lechatchila, then what the rabbis are saying to Rabbi Eliezer makes sense. It's not appropriate to do this. However, amrit aidei gilgul might nafkala mina. So we'll say, but if it's only through gilgul shvua, meaning if the only way to administer the shvua for her thread and for her dough is if she's already taking a shvua as a chenvanis. So if it's happening, meaning if she already has to take a shvua as a chenvanis because she's operating in a business capacity, who cares if we roll on this additional shvua as well? Why would that matter? To which the Gemara says, the amrale kevan dikis basrai kulehai lo matzina the adr bahadach. This is an incredible yesod in marriage and shalom bayis. What does she say to him? If you are going to be so meticulous with every single thing that I do, then I cannot live with you. So it's meaning what she said, what the Gemara is saying is like this. You want to say that once she's taking a shvua as a chenvanis, so what does it matter if we roll on to that? We're megalgel, the thread and the dough, because she can say, you know what, it's not about the thread and the dough. If you're looking over my shoulder like that, then the truth is, this is not going to work. And we'll say, no, we know it's true. It's an incredible din in Shalom Bayis, that a person has to be mevater. A person has to learn, sorry, I don't know why my English is so. A person has to learn to yield, right? A person has to realize that my significant other may do things that are not, quote unquote, correct in my eyes. A person may do things that are upsetting to me, that are annoying to me. But if a person is medactic with their significant significant other on every single little thing, it's impossible for a person to live under a microscope. Tashma, Harishala Patras Ishtamina Nedamina Shvua, Voshiva Chenvanis, Oshemina Apotropia, Harizu Mashpia Kozman Sheyirze. And we will see in the next Mishnah that there are circumstances in which a man proactively exempts his wife from ever being subject to a Shvua. Right? That I will never administer a Shvua to you. So if you had a case where a man proactively went ahead and exempted his wife from a neder, from a Shvua, Voshiva Chenvanis, and he appointed her as a storekeeper, shopkeeper, Shemina Apotropia, or he appointed her as an overseer of the business dealings of the estate. He's permitted to go ahead and administer an oath to her based on the fact that now she's running the business. As a wife, he can't administer an oath to her. But as a person running his business, as an employee, he absolutely can. But if he did not appoint her as a shopkeeper, as someone overseeing the business affairs of the estate, he does not have the right to go ahead and administer an oath. Rabbi Eliezer says, Rabbi Eliezer says, not true. Even if what? Even if he never formally appointed her as a chenvanis, a shopkeeper, or an apotropia, he still can administer an oath upon her. Why? Because we'll say every woman is an apotropis. How is every woman an apotropis, an executor? She's the apotropis over her thread. She's the apotropis over her dough. Meaning she has assets of the estate that are under her direct purview. And therefore, again, Rabbi Eliezer says he always has the ability to administer a shavua upon her, to make sure that she is not inappropriately using the items to which she has access to in the estate. Amrulo ein adam dar nachash bikfifa. To which the rabbi says, that's not right. A person can't live with a snake in the same basket. I.e., if you create a situation where the husband at whim could administer a shvua to her because he wants to make sure that she's not using too much dough, she's not using too much thread, it's an untenable, it's an unsustainable marriage, unsustainable situation. Rabbi says, what do we see from here? Shmamina lechatchila shmamina. Rabbi say, what do we see from here? We see from here that Lamaisa, Rabbi Eliezer allows this shvua on the spindle and on the dough lechatchila. Remember again, going full circle. The Mishnah had two cases. The Mishnah had a case where if a man makes his wife a chenvanis or an apotropia, so she's acting in a business capacity, he has the ability to administer a shvua upon her in a business context, that she's not stealing from the business, no different than any other one else who was running your business. Rabbi Eliezer comes along and essentially says he could even administer a shvua upon her on her thread and on her dough. Why? Because now we understand. Rabbi Eliezer is essentially saying she's an apotropis. She's running the thread business. She's running the dough business. Therefore, you can administer a shvua. The Gemara shaila was when Rabbi Eliezer says that you could go ahead and administer the shvua. Is that only through gilgul? Is that only if she's an apotropis in a more global sense, or a chenvanis? Then you could add on these smaller items as well. Or is he even saying lechatchila? You could go ahead and administer a shvua about her thread and about the dough. And the Gemara's conclusion is Rabbi Eliezer shita is even lechatchila. Even lechatchila, the husband could choose to go ahead and make her take a shvua, even just al pilcha. Valisa. So both say we paskin like the Tanakama, not like Rabbi Eliezer. And halacha l'maisa again, if she's running the business of the estate, then einachinami, the husband has the right to make her take a shvua, not because she's his wife, but because you have the right to administer a shvua like that to anyone who's running your business, to keep them honest and to make sure they're not stealing. But l'maisa again, a husband does not have a right to administer a shvua on his wife to make sure she's not taking too much dough, not making too much thread, for the simple reason that such a situation like that type of tension will ultimately again create an unsustainable marital context. So we'll stop over here. We'll pick up Mir Tashem with the Mishnah tomorrow. All right, to both say good morning. A lot to do today. So today's daf is Pei Zayin. We are picking up at the Mishnah on Pei Vav Amud Beis. Says the Mishnah, Kasav la neder ushvua ili alayach. So we'll say, remember, actually the Gemara alluded to this Mishnah yesterday. If a man writes to his wife that I am freeing you, I am exempting you from any neder and shvua, meaning that I am essentially relinquishing my right to impose upon you any kind of neder or shvua. So he's not permitted to go ahead and impose an oath on her. But if, let's say, she dies and her heirs want to come to collect the ksuba, or others, or let's say she sold the ksuva, and others are coming in her place. So to them, the husband is permitted to impose a shvua. Neder u'shvua ini alayich ba'al yorshayich ba'al abayim b'rshusech. But if he says, I exempt you from a neder, as well as on your inheritors, or anyone who comes in your stead, then then he's not permitted to go ahead and administer an oath to her, to her heirs, or to anyone else who comes in her stead. Aval Yorshav mashpiin oso. Aval Yorshav mashpiin oso v'es Yorshav esavayim b'shusa. But his inheritors are permitted to go ahead and administer an oath to either her inheritors or to anyone who comes in her stead. Ein li v'lo li Yorshai v'lo lebayim b'shusi alayich v'al Yorshayich v'al abayim b'shusech. So we'll say, let's say he writes the following statement: I and my heirs, or anyone else who comes in my stead, does not have the ability to administer an oath to you, to your heirs, or to anyone who comes in your stead. So neither he nor his inheritors nor anyone who comes in his place are not permitted to administer an oath. Lo osa, not to her. Lo liyarsha, her heirs. V'lo abayim b'shusa, or anyone ultimately again who comes in her stead. Halcha mikevra baila lebeis aviyah. If she went from her husband's grave to her father's home, which is another way of saying she went from the levaya back to her father's home, or she went back to her father-in-law's home after the levaya, below naasis apotropia, and she never became an apotropis, meaning she never got involved in the financial matters of the estate. Ein hayarshim mashpiin osa. The yarshim do not have the right to go ahead and administer an oath to her. V'im naasis apotropia, but if she became an apotropis, Hayorshim mashpiin osa ala asid lamo. The Yorshim are able to go and administer an oath upon her going forward, meaning for anything, because now she's the apotropis of the estate. Ve'in mashpiin osa ala shavar, but they may not go ahead and administer an oath upon her for that which occurred in the past. Says the Gemara Shvua ma'avidite. So what are we talking about? Meaning, when the Gemara says over here that the husband exempts her from a shvua, what kind of shvua are we talking about? Amrav Yudamarav, top of Pei Zayin. We're talking about again that I will say, if he, remember we saw this yesterday, that if the husband goes ahead and appoints his wife as an apotropis over the estate, he has the ability to make her take a shvuah in this that she's not stealing anything. But remember, that's not unique to marriage. That's true in any case where someone's running your business. So the halacha gives the employer, the business owner, the right to impose a shvuah at will upon the person running his business. By the way, this is a good thing. It's a good thing because it keeps the apotropis, it keeps the person running the business honest. If a person knows that at any moment the Baal could go ahead and administer an oath, person knows under the microscope. So we're talking about over here about a husband who appointed his wife to be an apotropis while he was still alive. And therefore, again, what he's writing over here is that Lamaisa, even though he's saying to his wife, no, appointing you as the apotropis, I am hereby exempting you from any type of shua. Now remember, why would a husband do this? We saw this yesterday, because a wife would say, I'm uncomfortable living under the microscope like that. I'm your wife, you're asking me to help out with the business, I'm doing so, but I'm not comfortable always being subject to shvua. So therefore he writes to her, I'm exempting you from shvua. That's the first opinion. Rav Nachman Amar Rabba Baravua, ala pogemes ksuvasa. Oh no, so Rav Nachman says it's a different case. And also, now we're going to see this actually in the next Mishnah. Pogemes ksuva is a woman who claims that she received partial payment on her ksuva. So we will see in the next Mishnah that if she claims that she receives partial payment on the ksuva, so she has to take a shvu in order to claim the rest. Rav Nachman is suggesting that the case in the Mishnah is where he says that even if you claim that you receive partial payment on the ksuva, I'm exempting you from shvu in order to collect the rest. Also, Rav Mordechai, Amr l'shmai tekemed Ravashi. So Mordechai went and he said over this ruling in front of Ravashi. So Bishlam l'man Amr ala pogemes ksuvasa demaska adaita dilma mitztarchi lizuzi v'shakilna miksuvasai. Now, so it makes sense according to the one who says that we're dealing with the case of a woman who received partial payment of the ksuva, because sometimes a woman will require some extra money for something, and she could ask her husband for an advance on the ksuba. That could definitely happen. And therefore what? Va'amrlei ksovli to lo mishtabisli. And she says to her husband, I want you to put in writing that you will not go ahead and make me take a shvu in order to collect the rest. El lamanda amar, because the Rose said, meaning that's a matsui case. A case like that could happen. El lamanda amar ala petropia shenasis bechaye baila. But Rabbosai, if we're talking about a situation where lemaisa he's exempting her. If she becomes an apotropis on his estate, he is exempting her from having to take an apotropis shvua. So the Gemara says, "Ihi mihaves yada de mosav apotropia." Does she know that he's going to appoint her as an apotropis? The Amra li ksov li de lo mishabes li, that he could write for her proactively, or that she could say to him, "Write for me that you will not make me take an oath." As well, what the Gemara is suggesting is the following: a case like this, where a husband is proactively exempting his wife in shvua, very often this could happen at the beginning of a marriage. So at the beginning of a marriage, I understand a woman might know that she may want a ksuva advance at some point in time. And so she says to her husband, I want you to write down now that you're exempting me from shavua in order to go, and that way I know that if I need to take a little bit of an advance payment on my ksuva, you're not going to make me take a shavua to collect the rest at the end of the day. But how does a woman know that one day her husband's going to appoint her as apotropis over the estate, that she asks him now to commit in writing that you're exempting me from shavua? Amarleis, he said to him, Ason aha masnisula. You're understanding this as going on one part of the Mishnah, Anan aha masanin Allah. We actually learn this, that this is referring to the last part of the Mishnah, if a woman went from the Levi of her husband to the home of her father, or for that matter, she went back to her father-in-law. So it doesn't matter whose home she's going back to. What matters is that she's not involving herself in the affairs of the estate. She's not becoming an apotropis. Ein hayarshin mashpian osa. So the yarshim cannot go ahead and make her take an oath. They can't make her take an oath. They can't make her take an oath. Ve'imnas is apotropia, but if she became an apotropis for the estate, then what? Yarshin mashpian osa ala asid lavo. Ve'in mashpian osa al sha'avar. They may go ahead and they may take. They are permitted to allow her. They are permitted to make her take an oath going forward. Meaning, I both say now the yarshim are the inheritors of this property. If she is now the executor of the estate, she's running the business. Going forward, remember, husband's dead, which means that the promise that husband made not to make her take a shavua goes to the grave with him. The Yarshim are the new owners. Going forward, the Yarshim are permitted to go ahead and tell her, you must take an oath when we desire. However, ve'im mashpin osa al sha'avar. But Rabbi say they can't go ahead and make her take a shavua on the past. Al sha'avar, right? Excuse me, sha'avar. My avidite. And I will say, what does that mean? They can't make her take a shvuah on the past. What the Gemara is asking over here is two questions. If you look at Rashi, it's actually right across. Sha'avar my avidite. Kilomar ad masai kari the sha'avar the lo amina nichse diasmininu ve'intinai shalom mu'abar. So we'll say, here's what's happening. Husband made an agreement during his lifetime that he's not going to impose a shvuah upon his wife. And now we're assuming right now it's about a shvuah apotropis, right? Not going to make her take a shvuah. Now here's what we know. When he dies, that shvuah goes with him. The shaila is, from what point and time forward are the Yisomim permitted to make her take a shvuah? So that's the one wants to know, because the Mishnah said that they can make her take a shvuah going forward, but they can't make her take a shvuah on the past. Halachically, what constitutes the past? Ma'ya vidite. Amrav Yehuda Amarav ala petropis shenasis b'chaye baila. This is talking about an apotropis that she was appointed as an apotropis while her husband was still alive. Ava be'misa l'kvura mashba'in Allah. Oh, so you know what it means? Past means when husband was still alive. But once husband dies, the Yarshim have the ability to make her take a shvuah about any of her dealings and any of her transactions with the property of the estate. So between death and burial already, meaning it's another way of saying, from the moment that the husband dies, the past is done, the agreement is done, and from the moment that he dies, the Yarshim can make her take a shvuah about her business dealings with the estate. Rav Masna says, no, afilu bein misa l'kvur lo mashvin Allah. It's not true. Even between death and burial, that's still called avar, that's still called the past, and they can't make her take a shvuah about her business transaction during that time. Do amri nardoi, because the nardoim say, lekarga ulemezoni ulekvura mazbinon below askarta. Both it's very interesting. So the nardoi say that you could sell off property of an estate to pay for both. Say karga is head tax. Mezoni is mezonos for a wife and for daughters and for orphans. And kvura means burial. You could sell off state property, Yarshim's property, without an announcement. And I both say, now this is interesting. We'll see this later on, that the halacha is that before you go ahead and you sell property, of Yisomim, so the halacha is you have to announce the sale for a certain amount of time. The reason for that is why? in order to encourage the interests of buyers. Because remember, again, if you sell something quickly, you don't give enough time to be able to get the word out. So this is Gemara discusses that you have to announce the sale of the property for X amount of time before the actual sale takes place in order to get the best deal for the Yisomim. But however, there are certain exceptions to this, which means if you have to pay off your head tax to the king, or if you have to go ahead and you have to sell off for mazonos, or you have to pay for a levaya, in all of these cases you are permitted to sell off property without prior announcement. So what do you see from here? You see that the woman has to be given certain rights to transact with the property of the estate in order to provide for the needs of her husband's burial. So because of that, Rabbi Ami suggests that Rav Masna. Rav Masna suggests that therefore halacha lemaisa, there's no the period from which her, say differently, the time from which she is subject to the shavua for her transactions with the estate is only after the burial of her husband. But anything prior to the burial, she is exempted under the agreement that her husband made with her, not to subject her to any shavua. Amar Rabba, Amar Reb Chia, Delo Nadar Udelo Shavua. What's another case now? Rabba said, Reb Chia, Delo Nadar Udelo Shavua. Who is so? Let's say he says to his wife the following. He writes to his wife the following: I will not subject you to any neder. I will not subject you to any shavua. Rashi says in Kesuvos lashon zeh. Right? I'm not going to impose on you any neder and no shavua. Who in yachal lashbia? He is not permitted to impose upon her a shavua. Aval yarshav mashpian also. But his heirs may. So meaning when he dies and his heirs inherit the estate, they are permitted to go ahead and impose an oath upon her. Naki neder, naki shvua. This is interesting. Let's say you use the lashon ever. You are cleansed from a neder. You are cleansed from a shvua. Then what's the halacha? Says Reb Chia, bein hu ubein yershim ein mashpian osa. Both he and his heirs are not permitted to go ahead and give her an oath. Why? Hachi kamar. This is what the husband really means to say to her. Mankis mishvu asa. I am literally cleansing you from shuas. What he's doing over here in this case is he's saying to her that you are absolutely absolved from any shvua or any neder with anything to do with this particular property, anything to do with this estate. Rav Yosef says, Rav Yosef, Rav Chia, Delo neder delu shvua hu eni achal lashpia val yarshin mashpian osa. So we'll say another version now. If he says lo neder lo shvua, he writes this. Then what? Then he can't give her, he can't impose a shvua, but his inheritors may. Naki neder, naki shvua. But again, if he says you are cleansed from a neder, cleansed from a shvua, then what? Bein hu ubein yarshin mashbian osa. This is very interesting. So in this version of Rav Yosef, if he says naki neder, naki shvua, both he and his heirs are permitted to impose a shvua. What's the pshat? Hachi kamarla naki nafshech b'shvuasa. What he's saying to her is cleanse yourself with the shvua. In other words, go ahead and clear up any ambiguity or any difficulty by taking the shvua. Next case. Naki nafshech b'shvuasa. I'm sorry. Shalach Rav Zakkai lemar ukva. So Rav Zakkai sent to Mar Ukva. Bein delo shvua, bein dinaki shvua. Whether he said to her lo shvua or naki shvua, whether he used either of those phraseologies, bein delo neder, bein dinaki neder. Whether he said, no, I'm not going to impose a neder on you, or you should be cleansed from the neder. If he said, b'nechasai, if he said, in my property, I am cleansing you or exempting you from a neder for a shvua from my property, then what? Hu eni yachal lashpia. Then he is not permitted to go and impose a neder upon her. However, aval yarshin mashpian osa. But Rabbi say his inheritors may. Why? Because since he's using the lashon of my property, what he's saying is, as long as this property is mine, you are exempted from a shvua or neder. But once that property becomes what? Becomes someone else's, i.e. my yershim, they are permitted to impose a shvua upon you. Minechase ilain, but if he just says you're exempted from a shvua from a neder from this property, then what? Then what he's saying is, bein hu ubein yarshav ein mashpiin oso. That both he and his heirs are not permitted to go ahead and make her take a shvua. Amr Rab Nachman, Amr Shmuel. So Nachlas, the name is Shmuel, Mishum Abba Shaul ben Ima Miriam, in the name of Abba Shaul, the son of Ima Miriam, Bein de lo shvua, bein de naki shvua. Whether he said lo shvua or naki shvua, bein de lo neder, bein de naki neder. Whether you said I'm not giving you a neder or you should be cleansed from a neder. Bein minachasai, bein minachsachya elain. Whether he said from my property or from this property, bein hu ubein yarshav ein mashpian osa. So in this case, Abba Shaul, the name of Ima Miriam, whenever he makes a lashon of I'm exempting you from a shvua, so we interpret that to mean that he's exempting her in totality from any shvua to do with this property. Whether he owns the property, whether his Yarshim owns the property, she's exempt. But what am I supposed to do? Because the Chachamim said what? The Chachamim put down, even though this is the halacha, that whenever you exempt her from a shvua, you're exempting her from everything. You're exempting her from, when it's your property, from the Yisomim. You can't give her a shvua, Yisomim can't give her a shvua. But what could I do? The Chachamim were very strict when it comes to anyone who wants to take property from Yisomim. And the halacha is that if you want to take property from an estate owned by Yisomim, what must you do? You must go ahead and take a shvua. The Ika de Amri la Masnisa. Others interpret this as a brayso. Abba Shal ben Ima Miriam Amar. Abba Shal ben Miriam said, Abba Shal ben Ima Miriam Amar. Bein de lo shvua, bein de naki shvua. Bein de lo neder, bein naki neder. Bein menichse, bein menichsachya elaine. So I'll say whatever you said, right? I'm exempting you from neder. I'm cleansing you from neder. My property, the property, in all of these cases, bein hu'u, bein yarshav, ein mashbiyan osa. Now in this case over here, so therefore what? He's given up the right to administer a shvua, and that right is given up both for him as well as for his heirs. But what could I do? What am I supposed to do? Because Chazal said that you can't collect from the property of Yisum without taking a shvua. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Shol, halacha keben ima Miriam. The halacha follows the son of Ima Miriam, meaning the halacha follows Abba Shol. And I both say this indeed is the halacha that Lamaisa again, when he uses this lashon of right lo shvua, lo neder, inakim shvua, inakim neder, nechasai, elaine. Whatever lashon he uses, his intention is to free her from all oaths concerning this property, and that exemption, meaning, and that's true. He can't administer an oath. His inheritors can't administer an oath. But Lamaisa, at the end of the day, Chazal still instituted a blanket rule, and that blanket rule is you can't collect from property of Yisomim without a Shavua. And all of that was done in order to safeguard the property of Yisomim. And we learned this before, because since Yisomim often are not versed in the business dealings of their father, someone shows up and says the deceased father owes me this, owes me that. They don't necessarily know. Therefore, the only way to really protect them is to ensure that the only way you can collect from that property is to do so with a shvua. Says the Mishnah, Hapogemes Kesuvos, another interesting case. So Hapogemes Kesuvos, we'll see what this case means in just a moment. So if a woman is pogem her ksuva, lo sifra ele b'shvua, she can only collect with a shvua. Eid echad mi'ida shiperua. Similarly, again, if you have an eid echad that testified that the ksuva was already paid, lo sifra ele b'shvua, she can only collect the ksuva with the shvua. Minichse yisomim uminichasim mishubadim. If she wants to collect her ksuva from the property of yisomim or from sold property, v'shalo b'fanav, or if he's not present, in all of these cases, lo sifra ele b'shvua, you can only collect with the shvua. So now the Mishnah is going to explain each of these cases. Hapogemes ksuva seketzad. What is the case of pogemes ksuva? Haisa ksuva se'alef zuz. She had a very large ksuva of 1,000 zuz. V'amra la hiskabal ksuva sayich, and the husband claims, I paid you your ksuva already. Vehi omeres lo hiskabalti elamoneh. And she says, no, you paid me a money, right? You paid a money is 100 zuz, you paid me 100 zuz, but there's still another 900 zuz that you owe me. So what's the halacha? Lo sifra ele b'shvua. But says she can only collect the other 900 zuz if what? If she takes a shvua, then indeed she is still owed that money. Eid echad, correct. Eid echad mi'ida shehi perua. So what happens if you have an eid echad that testified that the ksuva was paid? So what's the case? Ketzad ha'isik ksuva se'elav zuz. Same thing. Her ksuva was 1,000 zuz. Va'amra la hiskabalt ksuva sayich. And the husband claims you received. I paid you. Vehi omeres lo hiskabalti. She said I didn't get. Rosa is different. In this case, she's saying I didn't get anything. However, again, the eid echad mi'ida shi perua. But you have an eid echad who says, no, you did receive the money. So what's the halacha? Lo sifra ella b'shvua. She could only collect with the shvua. That's the second case. Third case, minachasim mishubadim. Kate said, what's the case of where she's collected from nechasim mishubadim? Machar nechasav lachirim. So she's married to a man, and over the course of the marriage, he went ahead and sold off his property. Now he dies, or he divorces her. He has no property left. So she wants to collect from the sold properties. So Rabbi says she has the right to go and collect from properties that were sold after the date of the marriage. The halacha is lo sifra ela b'shvua. She can only collect with a shvua. Menichse yisomim keser. What's the case of nechse yisomim? Meis, husband died, v'yeniach nechas of the yisomim, and he left his property to his heirs. V'hine fras minei yisomim, and she wants to collect her ksuva from now the estate of the yisomim. Lo sifra ela b'shvua. She can only collect with a shvua. V'shelo b'fanav keser. What's the case of where she wants to collect her ksuva not in his presence? Halach lo l'medina sayam. So we'll say, so what happens? He divorces her, and then he goes overseas. And she wants to collect her ksuva from his property. She can only collect with the shvua. On the base, Rabbi Shimon says, any time that she claims her ksuva, hayarshim mashbiyin osa. The yarshim ultimately again have the ability to impose an oath upon her. Then but if she doesn't claim her ksuva, so the Yarshim don't have a right to impose an oath upon her. So we'll see in the Gemara what exactly this is talking about. Says the Gemara, Savar Rami Bar Chama Meimar Shvua Doraisa. So Rami Bar Chama wanted to say that the Shvua that we're referring to in the Mishnah is a biblical Shvua. What's the case? The Katoin Masayim, the Kamodi Libameya, Havya Modu B'Mikzas Hatayna. Mentioned the Mishnah. That's what. Remember, we're familiar with this concept of mod b'mikzas. So mod b'mikzas means that if someone makes a claim and you admit to part of the claim, that partial admission triggers the need for a shvuah in order to substantiate the rest of your claim. So, for example, in this particular case over here, in the first case in the Mishnah, what's happening? Woman has a ksuva of 1,000 zuz. Husband claims that what? I paid you, right? I paid you. Wife says, you paid me 100. That's moda b'mitzvah. She admits that she received partial payment. Therefore, Rabbi Bar Chama wants to suggest that Rabbi said because she admitted partial payment, that triggers the biblical oath of moda b'mitzvah. And moda b'mitzvah says that, again, if you admit part of the claim, you have to go ahead and take an oath regarding the rest of it. Therefore, again, Rami Bar Chama is suggesting that the oath in the Mishnah, in fact, is a shvua d'oraisa.
But that's also a migo for her, right? That strengthens her claim.
What?
She's taking over 1,000.
Oh, so good. We're going to get that. No, meaning she's holding the document. 1,000. Good. We're going to see that. Barsha Kivanta. Good. Correct. She has a much stronger claim. She doesn't have to say anything. She could keep her mouth closed and she could just pull out her ksuva. We'll see that.
Seems like the wrong side of the modem.
Oh, so good. You guys are good today. Baruch Hashem. Excellent. So the Gemara says, the kamodim havila hodam mixes modem and Amarava Shechuvizaro says the truth is no. This doesn't make sense for two reasons. Chada the chalanishboin shebetorah nishba v'lo mishamin. I will say this is as I just mentioned. I will say this is the opposite mode of mixas. Normally, again, what a shavua does is a shavua exempts you from payment. That's normally how you think. Look at Rashi just a moment. Nishba v'lo mishamin. Misha tovin also. Nishba shene'emar v'lakach ba'la v'lo yishalem mishalav l'shayim l'shav. Remember, what's the classic case of mode mixas? Ruben lent me money. Right? He says, I owe him the money. I said, no, I paid you back. I borrowed $1,000. I paid you back 500. I only owe you 500. So it says, what's the halacha? I'm mod b'mikzas. I admit that I owe him the money. Since I admit that I owe him, that I paid part of the claim. Therefore, the Maisa, I have to swear about the rest. So mod b'mikzas is not a vehicle to collect money. Mod b'mikzas is the shvua ultimately what? To exempt you from payment. That's the biblical mode of b'mikzas. So that's taina number one. Normally, again, when you swear in order to get you out of payment, and yet in this case, she's swearing in order to what? In order to extract payment. Furthermore, furthermore, another technical issue, which is what? Which is that lamaisa, we don't generate an oath based on a kfira, based on a denial of a claim that has a lien against property. And others both say that this is getting more technical, but the idea is whenever you have a loan that is secured by real property, so the maisa kfira or a denial of that loan does not trigger a shvua. So in this case over here, because ksuva is secured by real property, therefore again, ultimately denial of that claim does not go ahead and trigger a biblical oath. So therefore, I will say, I want to be clear. All that's happening over here is Rava is saying, Rava is not disagreeing with the fact that there's a shvua. In this case, where a husband says, I paid you your ksuva of 1,000 zuz, she says, you only paid me 100, Rav is not disagreeing that the woman's going to take a shvua. Rav is just disagreeing with Rami Bar Chama's assertion that what? That this is a shvua d'oraisa. So Rav is just going to say, it's a shvua, but it's a shvua d'Rabbanan. Ela Amar Rava, mid d'Rabbanan. Rather, Rava says, no, this is a rabbinic shvua. Why? The para dayik, the mifra lo dayik. Because Rav say, under normal circumstances, what happens is, a person who pays the money is often much more meticulous in the details of his payment. The one who is being paid is a little less meticulous in the details. And therefore, v'ramu rabbanan shvua Allah, therefore the rabbis imposed the shvua upon the woman, ki heicha de tiduk, in order that she should be much more on top of the details. Tiduk, that she should be meticulous about the details as well. Because meaning, since she knows that she's going to have to take a shvua, in a case where let's say there's been partial payment of the ksuva, in order to collect the rest, she's going to have to take a shvua. The knowledge that she has to take a shvua makes her makes her desirous of being much more on top of the details. Ibaylahu, pogemes ksuvasa be'edim mahu. It will say, what happens if? Sorry.
Is there a difference between the shvua d'oraisa and shvua d'Rabbanan?
Yeah. So right. See, the answer is yes. The answer is ultimately, again, there's a difference in if hipuk shvua, if you could flip the shvua onto the other party, if one party is chashid ala shvua, and also just severity of the shvua. Shvua d'oraisa is going to have greater severity than the shvua d'Rabbanan. So boilu pogemes ksuvasa be'edim mahu. The Bible says, so what happens if she was pogim her edim, not pogim her edim, pogim her ksuva in front of edim. Now what does this mean? Look at Rashi. Pogemes ksuvasa be'edim, hiskabalti mana ubifnei edim kibaltim. So we'll say she's saying, I received part of my ksuva, and I received it in front of edim. So again, let's say she has a ksuva for 1,000 zuz, and she says, I received 100 zuz of my ksuva in front of edim. Mahu. What's the halacha? So let's remember, what is the husband claiming? Husband's claiming, I paid you the entire ksuva. So maybe we could say like this: Im isa de para be'edim hava parla. So on one hand, I could say, in the same way that the 100 zuz was paid in front of edim, if he really paid the rest of the ksuba, it would have been done what? It would have been done in front of edim as well. The fact that there is no edus to testify that the rest of the ksuba was paid would indicate that what? That lamaisa, he didn't pay it. Oh, Dilmar, perhaps on the other hand we could say, Isramuye Isramile. Maybe the fact that he paid her the 100 zuz in front of Edim Rabosai, that's not that he went out of his way to find Edim, it just happened to be that what? That Edim were there. So since Edim were there, Lamais, again, he paid her in front of Edim, but he's not necessarily medactic to go out and find Edim. Tashma, Kolan Ishpain Shabbator Nishpain V'lo Mashamin. I will say, in general, again, when you take a shvua, a biblical shvua, you take a shvua in order to exempt yourself from payment. That's the goal of a shvua. However, there are certain shvuos ve'elu nishba'in v'notlin. But these are cases where a person takes a shvua in order to what? In order to be able to collect money. What are those cases? Has-sachir. So we'll say, again, remember, look at Rashi. Sachir, these are all interesting cases. Sachir. Amar lo tainli schari v'hu omer nasati. I'm working for someone. I go to my boss, I say, I'd like to get paid. My boss says, my employer says, I paid you already. So what's the halacha? The employee has the ability to take a shvua. And when he takes a shvua, he's able to get paid. Hanigzal, someone ultimately again who has property stolen from. Look at Rashi. Nigzal, ra'ua shenichnas beveso. I see someone entering my home. Amarlo teinli kelai shnatalta. V'omerlo natalti. Va'idim rosh yotzav akilm tachas kanfei taliso. V'lo yaduma. So also listen to this. So Reuben goes into my house and he comes out going ahead and carrying my crock pot. That's very Hamish. Right? He's carrying my crock with the cholent in it. Right? So I see you carrying my crock pot, and I say, you took my crock pot. He said, what does it matter? It was my crock pot. And witnesses saw him coming out of my house. They saw him coming holding a crock pot, but they don't know if it's his crock pot or my crock pot. So they say, what's the halacha in a case like that? I take a shvua, and I get to retrieve the item. Next, hanechbal. The Bible says someone who's injured. Rashi, ra'u shenichnas l'soch beiso v'yado shalem. So it says what happens. Reuben comes into my house, and when he comes into my house, he's fine. But he comes out of my house with his arm in a sling, right? And he says, "You broke my arm," and I say, "I didn't do anything to you." So what's the halacha? So the damaged party goes ahead and takes a shvua and gets paid for his damages. Next, ushekinegdo chashad ala shvua. We saw this in yesterday's daf. That if, let's say, someone has to swear, right? Reuben has to swear, but Reuben is chashash. Reuben is known as a habitual false swearer, false oath taker. So Rabbi said we do what's called hipuch shvua. Hipuch shvua means we flip the shvua onto the other party. onto the party that has a chazaka being believable. Or next, v'chen v'ni alpan kaso. This is another very interesting case. Let's say I have an arrangement. Rashi says v'chen v'ni alpan kaso shekosei po hakafos of kach tzivani ploni lo seis lepoalav v'nasati lahem v'hem omrim lo natalnu shneim l'shalom lo tumen. This is a fascinating case. Let's say I go ahead and I arrange with the local shopkeeper. I employ 5 people, and I say to the shopkeeper, listen, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to pay my wages in the form of wares. So my employees each earn $500. I'm giving them each a $500 tab at your store. Now listen, I want to be clear. An arrangement like this only works if the employees agree to this as well. But let's say they agree to it. So they're going to take their wages in the form of wares from the store. So I tell Ruben, just open up an account. I have 5 employees, $500 each, $2,500 account. So what happens? My workers come to me and they say we never got our groceries, right? We never took our stuff. We never got. There was nothing left. Therefore, you have to pay us. The Chenveni says, "What are you talking about?" I went ahead and they came to the store and they took $500 in groceries each, right? So we'll say, so what's the halacha? This is fascinating. The halacha is that the employees have to take a shvuah and they extract money from the employer, and the storekeeper takes a shvuah and he also extracts money from the employer. This is quite interesting. So the employer could actually end up, in this kind of case, paying out $5,000 because, again, each party is taking a shvuah that they never got their money. Again, we'll talk about that case a different time. And I will say, if a person goes ahead and pogim shtaro shelo be'edin, then ultimately, again, he's claiming that he was paid part of his claim without edim. Without edim. So the Gemara on this, I will say, and I remember that whole thing was brought up for this last case. So this is a case now where someone is claiming that they received partial payment of a debt due to them, but without edim. Shelo be'edim. Now the only reason why Lemaisa, again, you'll take a shvuah in this case, is because there were no edim. However, shelo be'edim in, be'edim lo. Now what's the logic over here? What the Gemara is suggesting is like this. Person comes along and says that I received partial payment for my debt without edim. So we'll say, so without edim, therefore again, if the person wants to claim the rest, they have to go ahead and take an oath. But if they received partial payment with edim, we could infer from that what? That if the person who owed them the money went out of their way to pay back part of the debt with edim, that they're going to pay back the rest with edim also. Therefore, if there's no edus on the rest of the financial obligation, that means that it hasn't been paid. So we'll say, so remember, this is a proof to our case. Because we were suggesting over here, the Gemara wanted to know what happens if she claims that she received partial payment of her ksuva in front of Edim. And the Edim say, yes, we saw her that she got 100 zuz. So how do we view that? Do we say that that's a clear proof that the husband did not pay the remaining 900 zuz? Because again, if he was paying 100 zuz in front of witnesses, then what? That means he's only going to repay in front of witnesses. And the fact that there are not witnesses on the subsequent 900 zuz means that what? He didn't pay it. Or do we say, no, he didn't go out of his way to find Edim. It just happened to do when he was paying her the 100 zuz that there were Edim there. So you figure, you know what? Okay, witnesses, why don't you witnesses? But lav dafka that he went out of his way to find Edim. So you see from this price that what? That one of the cases where a person has to take a shvuah is pogim shtaro shelo be'edim, where a person received partial payment for their obligation with witnesses, without witnesses. Then they have to take a shvuah to collect the rest. But the inference from that is that if they received partial payment with witnesses, that indicates that the person who owes them the money is only paying back with witnesses. Therefore, if there's no eidos on the rest of the debt, there is no obligation to go ahead and take a shvuah because the assumption is what? It has not yet been paid. To which the Gemara says, Lomi bai kamar. The Gemara says, no, Lomi bai Rabba says a stylistic idea. Lomi bai means you don't have to say this. Lomi bai be'edim devadai tzricha shvuah. Rabba say now, it goes without saying that if there was edim, Lomi bai be'edim, if the loan was paid with edim, that certainly she requires a shvuah to go ahead and collect the rest. Look at Rashi. Devadai tzricha shvuah ala shar on the rest of the debt. Daha de kamoja bahai mana mishum edimhu. The lav hashavas avedehi, because the Moshe says she has no choice but to admit the 100 zuz that's been paid, because the Moshe said there's edus on it. Therefore, avashalo be'edim ema tehavi kemeshiv aveda. Moshe said this is Howard's point. See, I would have thought that perhaps if there's no edus, that it's like meshiv aveda. What does meshiv aveda mean? Like returning a lost object. That when she admits that she was paid 100 zuz of her ksuva, It's like returning lost Abosai because she doesn't have to say anything, right? Because remember, in all of these cases, who has the ksuva document? She has the ksuva document. Is there anything written on the ksuva document? 100 zuz received on the 12th of Iyar. There's nothing written on there. She could keep her mouth closed, and she doesn't have to say anything. So I would have thought that in a case like that, where she's admitting the fact that she did receive 100 zuz, and there are no edim, that she should be like a Meshav Aveda, someone who's returning a lost object. We'll say that expression of Meshav Aveda means if I find an object and I could keep and no one will know the difference, but if I go out and I return it, that's Meshav Aveda. So I would have thought that when she admits the 100, so she's like a Meshav Aveda, and therefore again, V'tishko below Shvua, and therefore she should be able to collect the rest of the Ksuva without the Shvua. Kamash Malam, no. Kamash Malam say that even in this case again, where she is admitting that she will receive the hundreds, even though she didn't have to say a thing, and there's no witnesses, but once she does say something that she received 100 zuz, that triggers the need at least for a rabbinic shvua in order for her to be able to collect the remaining 900. That's another interesting case. Let's say she received partial payment of her ksuva, but halacha l'meisa, she received it pachos mishava pruta, which means what? She received like less than a pruta at a time. So now, meaning over time, she's received, a good amount of her ksuva. We'll call it 100 zuz, but l'maisa, every single payment that she received was less than a pruta. Look at Rashi. Pachos yishar pruta. B'mana shimo da'alav shekibla o sima cheshbon kach nasati li biyon ploni v'kach biyon ploni u'mitzarfasam lecheshbon ati lepachos mishar pruta. So essentially, she received 100. By now, she received 100 zuz, but she received each a little bit less than a shara pruta at a time. What's ta'alacha? Now. Now we'll say, do we say the fact that she remembers what she received on which date? That she remembers even when she received less than a Shamar Pruta, which means she's very meticulous in her record keeping, which means what say. Then when she says she only received 100 zuz, she's believed Kushta Kamra, O Dilma, Ira Ume Kama Arma. Or do we say that perhaps what? That perhaps she's trying to be a little bit tricky, right? And she's trying to be a little bit deceiving by saying that she only received less than a shavar prut at each time, and therefore it's insignificant. The Gemara says teku. We're not sure. Ibaylahu pocheses ksuva samahu. So we'll say, what happens if a woman diminishes her ksuva? Now listen to this. Look at Rashi. Pocheses haisa ksuva sa elef zuz. Her ksuva was worth 1,000 zuz. Kasu b'shtar. V'hu omer hiskabalt kula. So also listen to this case. So her ksuva is worth 1,000 zuz. He claims that I paid you the entire ksuva. V'hi omer lo hiskabalti klum. Avamodani shlo hisnes imi l'ksuva elamana. Also listen to this. This is an amazing case. She has a ksuva document that says that her ksuva is 1,000 zuz. He claims I paid you. She claims you didn't pay me. But I'll tell you what, if you remember, even when the Ksuva says 1,000 zuz, you and I made an agreement that you don't have to pay me the 1,000 zuz. The Ksuva is only worth 100 zuz. 100 zuz. So she's denying that there was ever payment made on the Ksuva, but she's saying of her own volition that even though it says I'm owed 1,000 zuz, you and I personally agree that the Ksuva is not going to be 1,000 zuz, it's going to be 1/10 of that, it's going to be 100 zuz. So what's ta'alacha? Mi amrinan hainu pogemes. Do we say that perhaps this is the same case as pogemes, as what we saw in the Mishnah, a woman who claims to receive partial payment? O dilma pogemes moja b'miktsas ha lo kamoja miktsas. Rabbi say, or we can say no, this is not pogemes, because in the case of pogemes, what's happening? Rabbi say she's admitting that what? That she received partial payment. Here, she's not admitting that she received any payment. So Tashma, let's analyze this. Pocha says tifra shelo b'shvua. If a woman diminishes her ksuva, so she can go ahead and get paid without a shvuah. What's the case? Ketzad haisa ksuvasa elef zuz. If her ksuva was worth 1,000 zuz, va'amrlo hiskabalt ksuva seich, and husband claims I paid you. V'yomeres lo hiskabalti. She says I didn't go ahead and receive anything, but ve'ina elamana. But you and I made a side agreement that the ksuva is only going to be worth 100 zuz. So what's the halacha? Nifras shalo b'ksuvasa shalo b'shvua. So she's able to collect without a shvua. So we'll say, the Brisa rules that in the case of pocheses, she's able to go ahead and collect without a shvua. So the Gemara says, let's analyze this. B'may gavya. But we'll say, what is the vehicle of her collection, right? Meaning, what is the vehicle that entitles her to collect? So the Gemara says, "My God, b'hai shtar." You're going to say that it's with this ksuva, with the shtar. Hai shtar chaspa ba'amo. Shmuel says she can't collect with the shtar. Why can't she collect with the shtar? We'll say, because she's essentially saying that the shtar is irrelevant. Why is the shtar irrelevant? Because Lamaisa, again, she's saying the shtar says 1,000. She's saying, well, no, we don't really agree on 1,000. We agree on 100. In which case, she's rendered that shtar meaningless. To which the Gemara says, Amar Rava Breid Rava Ba'omeres Amana Haisa Beini Lebeino, where she ultimately says we had an agreement between one another, and Amana, I trust him, he trusts me, and therefore, even though we agreed on a lower amount for the ksuva, nevertheless, halacha lemaisa, we are going to create an agreement between one another, and therefore, again, we're going to agree that the shtar should still be the vehicle of collection. So we'll say, even though, again, by her saying we agreed on a lower ksuva, to a certain degree, she's rendered the shtar meaningless, but by saying that there's an amana, there's a trust between me and her, and him agreeing that there's a trust between me and her that we can use the shtar, that allows the shtar to be the vehicle of collection. All right, so we'll stop over here. We'll pick up a Mir Hashem at the 2 dots tomorrow.
In the case where she